You'll see the minute.
I see it.
Good. Now we got some people showing up. We got 20 people now. That's nice. Usually gets up to about 100 and 150 if it's a good day. We'll see. There's a weird time slot for us, so we shall see.
It is a weird time.
Yeah.
We're almost there, buddy.
Yeah, and then I'll play the live stream thing, and then we're good to go. Well, hello, Larry. You're here. We're live. Welcome to the Underneath, everybody. Larry, as I think many of you know, is actually on the ground there in Rome. He's currently in his apartment, but as recently as 32 minutes ago, you saw the long-awaited black smoke right for yourself right there in St. Peter's Square. Tell me what's going on, Larry. How you doing?
Well, yeah, I'm doing great, and I just want to communicate that how privileged and blessed I feel for actually being able to experience this. I told my wife, I've never been to Rome during a papal conclave and all that sort of thing. So I said, when the Pope dies, not only am I going to come over and cover all the stuff for various publications I write for, I want to be in St. Peter's Square. And so by golly, I got there at like 5:36 p.m. and it's already crowded as heck. And it was just surreal. And it was really kind of, to be honest with you, Cale, it was very energizing because you looked around, you saw tons and tons of young people and stuff. And it was very clear these people were not here just for touristy reasons. These were people who were really and interested. And there must have been at least 50,000 people in the square. So,
wow.
The official pronouncement was at 7 p.m. is when the first ballot would be burned and, turned into smoke. And so we're standing there at 7, and then it becomes 7:15, and then it's 7:30. And the people that I'm with said, okay, this is other journalists. And they said, this is weird. This is strange. So we scuttled up to a restaurant right near the Vatican, kept an eye on things with a live feed, the EWTN live feed. And I think the whole world was watching.
Yeah.
My wife was watching, and just in case. But we finished dinner, and there's still no black smoke. It's like 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
And so we go. I go back to the square. They left. It's 8:30. Then it's like 9 o'clock. I don't know when the black smoke finally happened, like 9 or right around 9 o'clock. But you had to listen to people in the square. And then I was checking social media, which was exploding. Yeah. And I was texting fellow journalists who are here in Rome who were also, and everybody was saying, this is just really unprecedented. This is weird that it would be 2 hours. But as I said to you off camera, it could be something as simple as the fact that before they voted, the Cardinals were given a talk, a reflection by Father Cantalamessa, who was the preacher of the papal household at one time. And he's very long-winded. So I don't know if he's ever preached at a papal conclave before. So he might have felt, well, I've got a captive audience, and by God, they're going to listen to me. So who knows? Who knows why it took so long? It could be that there is some kind of real intrigue going on.
Yeah, I have been sort of chattering with you and other people and friends and saying that, for my own particular sort of needs / wants, that I figured that a lengthier conclave favors the kind of things potentially that I would like to see. But that if we got a quick conclave, it's sort of, it's kind of a Rome-centric thing, right? And just to name names, I think somebody like Paroline, shooting it right away and grabbing it and making it happen. And so I have been actually, true story, my friends, I have been praying for a lengthier conclave. So, I didn't really pay that much attention to what time things are going. And then I kind of come back to my station here getting ready for our live stream. And I click on to look at the chimney. I'm like, oh, this is kind of intriguing. And my phone starts going off and the social media is going off. And I'm like, man, this is, anyway, it became sort of oddly riveting to sort of stare at, what was it? This is the thing that we were staring at for, I'm just going to show the people real quick.
Yeah, sure.
This is the thing I was staring at or looking forward, I should say, for a rather long time. But yeah, so I do think that, the longer this goes, the more wide open. Would you say that that's a fair
I would agree. Before we get to that, though, I have to say that I too was staring at that chimney, but in person. But the fact is, the sun was setting right behind that chimney, and boy, it was a bright Roman sun. And everybody's got their phones up trying to take a picture of the chimney, and all they're getting is sun glare. And my poor eyes, as I just took my glasses off, my eyes are. I probably am going to be blind for life because I was staring directly into the damn sun for an hour and a half like an idiot.
That's right.
But then, the sun finally went down. But yeah, you're right. And I'm going to say one other thing before we get to handicapping thing.
Yeah.
One of the things that struck me, and I thought this before, but I thought it even more being there. There is no drama on earth quite like this drama. Is there? Yeah. I mean, name another institution on this planet, be it political or religious, that has this backdrop, this Sistine Chapel, a secret conclave, 130 some dudes deciding behind the scenes, intrigue, and then black smoke, white smoke, and then some elderly dude comes out from the loggia and says, "Habemos papam," and stuff like this. It's just, this is high drama, and I hope the church never loses this high drama. I hope the symbolology remains.
I agree. The just the look of it all, it's just gorgeous. There was a particularly great shot, and I didn't get a chance to download the correct version. But there was a shot of them closing the door to the Sistine Chapel. These beautiful wood doors, and then right through the backdrop, you see all the men in red in this just bright blue Last Judgment right behind there. It's just so darn iconographic. It's just amazing, honestly. I'm just sitting there just grinning like a child. Yeah, it's amazing. It's not like sitting in that sterile, god-awful, ugly UN building with your little clicker voting machines and crap. This is beautiful. But anyway, getting to handicapping things, I mean, it's pretty much common knowledge here in Rome, talking to just people in the street, talking to fellow journalists, talking to a few bishops here and there. The deal is that the thinking is that because Francis did not call the cardinals together often at all to get to know each other. Just tell then, before you jump too quick there, I think that's worth talking about. So what has been the kind of the way this whole cardinal thing has worked in decades upon decades, just so they understand the delta there?
In the past, first off, this is an unprecedented number of cardinals. Right. Usually the number of cardinals is smaller. And usually the red hat goes to people from major diocesan sees, a Philadelphia, Los Angeles. But now, neither one of those bishops have red hats. Instead, it went to that McElroy fellow down in San Diego as a reward for being who the hell knows, loyal to the Pope or something. But anyway, that's not. But so in the past, the Pope has called the cardinals together. I mean, think about this. Mm-hmm. The College of Cardinals isn't just designed as ornamentation, and then once in a while they get together to vote for the new Pope. The College of Cardinals is actually his cabinet. It's the Pope's advisors. It's the people that he supposedly turns to help him govern the church. That's why every single cardinal has a titular church in Rome that they're in charge of, because in theory, they're part of the governing structure of the church. And so popes routinely call a consistory, or they call various meetings of the cardinals, so that the cardinals can get to know one another and work together with one another. And so that by the time a conclave comes around, they pretty much have a good idea who they want to replace the previous pope. This time around, however, Pope Francis sadly has not called them together. But on a positive note, he's also extended the red hat all over the world to the so-called peripheries. I mean, never before has Mongolia with 6,000
Mali,
or East Timor, Timor, Bali, places like this have been given a red hat. And so that's further reason why the Cardinals don't know each other very well. And so maybe that's another reason for the delay tonight. Maybe there were glitches. Maybe there were communication glitches. You may have been chaos once those doors were shut, and so we just don't know.
What's interesting, Larry, too, is that like I was looking at the cardinal electors for somebody like John the 23rd, or even Paul the 6th. You're talking about between 50 and 60 guys. And you talk like just in real numbers, right?
40 of them who were Italians.
Right. 40 of them who were Italian, and the other 10 lived in Rome. So these guys knew each other. And I'm reminded, of course, it's so funny, when you look at the way that the church names things, right? It's a sort of a way of finding original meanings of words. And so to call it the College of Cardinals. Obviously, this is not a reference to a university. This is not a reference to, your local football team. A college is a group of professionals oriented toward a shared goal or, sort of a shared way of thinking. And so, right. So to be collegial, right, it's sort of a group of people kind of coming back together. But these guys really do not know each other. And you sort of wonder, I want to connect this maybe later on. One of the costs of Francis's signature move to make this a more synodal church, quote unquote, is in some sense, he really froze out the cardinals and the bishops and the archbishops in this synod on synodality. And so I kind of wonder, even if you were sort of more inclined to be a kind of basically a Francis guy, are you a little peeved by that, do you think, Larry?
I think you're more than a little peeved by it. And my hope, I'm not going to try and hide this, my hope is that many of the Cardinals are very peeved. You may have selected me from the peripheries, Holy Father, but then you treated me like the peripheries. And I think, you've heard a few, like Cardinal Ray gave the homily this morning, at the Mass before and there were some not so subtle, not so hidden barbs at the previous papacy. And I think there is more resentment underneath the surface towards the papacy of Pope Francis for being arbitrary, being a bit petty, even not above being vindictive. This was Pope Francis, God bless him, for whatever his merits were. One of his demerits was he was inscrutable. He was completely inscrutable, and you never had a boss, right? Where one day he was happy with you and the next day he was pissed at you, and you never knew why. And you'd come into work and you were on eggs, walking on eggshells and that kind of stuff. Because what mood is the boss in today? That was the way Pope Francis ruled, and the Cardinals didn't like that, many of them. Anyway,
there's a funny section in this is going to be a weird one, but bear with me. There's a funny description of the manager of the company in The Heart of Darkness, Joseph Conrad's novel, The Heart of Darkness. And his power stemmed from two things. Number one, he didn't die like all the other Europeans who found themselves in the heart of Africa. And number two, he made everybody feel uneasy. And this combination of not dying and making everybody uneasy was very powerful, because what it did, it was essentially, it preserved him and his position of authority. And then everybody else was scrambling around, knifing each other in the back, trying to find favor, which they could never quite find. It's just hilarious.
That's a great analogy, because I think that's kind of what was going on here too. And so some of the thinking is that, well, maybe if even the Cardinals that would like to continue on with many of Francis's policies, more progressive, they would want to elect a cardinal that has sort of Francis's vision, but not Francis's personality deficiencies, his character deficiencies. At least as a manager, let's put it that way. And so that would mean perhaps someone like a Cardinal Parolin, a Cardinal Zuppi, a Cardinal Aveline of Marseille, France, all viewed as kind of Pope Francis type guys, but who have better managerial skills. Let's just put it that way. Now, I want to go back though to the communication thing.
Good.
But this is why the thinking is around here that if it's a quick conclave, if by noon tomorrow you see white smoke, or even later in the afternoon you see if you get white smoke tomorrow, that's a quick conclave, and that argues in favor probably of Cardinal Parolin, Secretary of State, because what it argues for is maybe the cardinals looking around at each other and saying, "We don't know any of you people, and so we're not going to take a chance on voting for somebody that I don't know." And so you go with the safe bet. Cardinal Parolin is a known commodity. I mean, everybody knows Cardinal Parolin. They've had dealings with him. He's the Secretary of State. He's very visible, and so they just might say, we don't know all these other people, so we're going to vote Cardinal Parolin in. Okay. So if you see that white smoke tomorrow, expect to see Cardinal Parolin. That's the current wisdom. The longer it goes.
Yeah, I was going to say, Julian, we're going to get to Tagle in a minute, but let's stick with Parolin. Give me the the sort of the best case, the best pitch for Parolin and the Larry pitch for Parolin.
Oh, well, the best pitch for Parolin is that he is got experience. He knows the Vatican. By the way, the Vatican ran this year an $87 million deficit, budget deficit. The Vatican is largely bankrupt. Yeah. And that's because donations to the Vatican cratered under the papacy of Pope Francis, because let's face it, the American church is what funds the Vatican. Yeah. Millions of dollars flow into the Vatican coffers from Americans. And yet Pope Francis made his disdain for the United States very clear. He made his disdain for those Catholics in the United States who are the most devout very clear. Yeah. And they quit giving money. And so this is no small thing. It could be that the Cardinals vote Parolin in because they think he can fix the finances, even though he was part of the $200 million debacle, the real estate.
I mean, his signature is on the documents. I mean,
yeah. But the thinking is that he knows the Vatican so well that he would be able to fix its bureaucracy, to fix the curia, to fix the finances, to stabilize all that. Also, he's known to be a theological moderate, a centrist, a conciliator. He is, after all, a diplomat.
Right.
Okay, but the downside, other than the fact, the $200 million London real estate debacle, that he and Becciu were conspiring with. Yeah. There's the fact that I think the China policy that he has helped to work out, where the Vatican is essentially bent over and said, do whatever you want to us, China. The Chinese government now runs the Chinese Catholic Church. It's that simple.
Yeah.
It's that simple. Yeah. And I think that is a betrayal on a grand scale.
Yeah. I mean, that's like that's, to my way of thinking, that's an historical abomination that, not for nothing. And a lot of my friends in the chat right now are friends from multiple denominations. Let's say, not for nothing, but these are the kinds of things that reformations were hatched through. Right, was the refusal to allow the local churches full sovereignty over the appointment of bishops. And so here we are, right as the Cardinals are descending upon Rome for the funeral of Pope Francis, and the Chicoms just drop a couple of new bishops that they name right in the middle of it. Clearly, a kind of a "hey guys, we own you" kind of move, seems to me.
Yeah, it's very, very similar to the fact that half of the Russian Orthodox bishops during the Soviet era were actually KGB agents. And we're rapidly going to be reaching the stage of the Catholic Church in China, where every single bishop is essentially an agent of the Chinese government, a stooge of the Chinese government. And that is the result of Cardinal Parolin. I think it was Cardinal Parolin who even said, the Chinese government is the best government in the world for putting Catholic social teachings into practice.
I
mean, this is a government that harvests organs from living prisoners and so forth. I mean, this is a horrific government, evil government.
And that's why the peculiar witness of somebody like Cardinal Zen is so important, and the way that he was treated by the Francis regime, and Francis himself is truly an utter scandal. And the fact that he was able to come back, and I think he probably said, hey, I'm still here. God willing, I'm here, and I'm going to sort of tell you a little bit about this Parolin character. So I think that has done a lot to sort of temper Parolin's, running the tables.
Yeah, and I think that I'm very, very hopeful that it's not going to be Cardinal Parolin. He might get a surge of early votes, 30 votes, 40 votes. There was some reporting, the reported, he's already got like 40 votes or whatever, but that's still a far away from the 2/3 you need. And I don't think he's going to be the next pope.
Yeah,
I really don't. But if you see the white smoke tomorrow, it's probably Parolin or Tagle. But Tagle has fallen off a cliff as far as I'm concerned.
So tell my audience real quick. They might know him from his penchant for karaoke, but what's his quick story? What's his best pitch, and what's his sort of?
Well, the best thing is, he's a kid from a working class, environment. A guy, he grew up just an ordinary dude.
Manila.
In Manila, and
Chinese ethnically, but in Manila.
Yes, exactly. And another plus in his favor is there are literally millions and millions and millions of Filipino Catholics, right?
Yeah.
And so why not reward, the Asian Catholic Church, the most Catholic Asian nation, the Philippines? Why not reward them with a pope? But I think that's about all you can say in his favor. He's got a certain charming personality, apparently. People who meet him say, oh, yeah, he's affable, he's down to earth. Okay, fine. I'm affable and down to earth, but I'm not going to be the damn pope. The strike against Tagle, I think, is he's an intellectual lightweight.
Yeah.
He's not distinguished himself at all intellectually, theologically. His theology seems to be trending in sort of Pope Francis' directions, which is fine. Francis had a certain gravitas to him. Let's face it.
But what's interesting to me, Larry, again, as a kind of trying to be well-informed layman from this side of the peripheries, he was a big JP2 guy when JP2 was around, and he was a big Benedict XVI guy when Benedict XVI was around. And then Francis comes and it's like, oh, we just sort of, and he's, I don't know, the affect, the shtick, it's kind of painful, honestly. It's just kind of painful.
There's a lot of bishops and cardinals that were like that. In the United States, people tend to forget that during JP2 and Benedict's reign, Cardinal McCarrick and Cardinal Wuerl were both big JP2 Benedict guys. They were
huge.
Theology of the body. They were, all of John Paul's encyclicals and Ratzinger's theology, and then boom, as soon as Pope Francis comes in, what we need is synodality. What we need is divorce and remarriage. What we need is LGBTQ. And it's like, oh, then you change your tune really fast. And I think Tagle is kind of you're right. It's the same thing. And what that is indicative of is an ecclesiastical ladder climber. That's what it's indicative of. Yeah. Because the cardinals that matter are the cardinals whose ideas don't change with the Pope. A Cardinal Pell, a Cardinal Mueller, people like that, their views don't change. You got other Cardinal
and to be fair, somebody like Cardinal McElroy. Cardinal McElroy was Cardinal McElroy well before Francis, right? Not my particular flavor of theology, as you know. I call him Cardinal Screwtape after all, but he's been consistent.
Yeah, he hasn't changed. Supich hasn't changed. Right. At least they've been consistent. Even during the Benedict years and so on. But anyway, Tagle also, it's being reported. I have no evidence and I can't substantiate it, but it is now out there in the public domain that it's being reported that Cardinal Tagle has a gambling problem. That he owes people money back in Macau and various other casinos. Now, once again, I want to emphasize, I don't have any direct evidence of any of that. But the point is, it's out there as knowledge. And so some of the cardinals, maybe even all of them, have had to have heard those same reports as well. And that's got to count against him, I think, at least for some of them.
God, it really sounds like that's something that a Parolin would do. I mean, to drop some stories like this, because it's like, okay, fine, you're going to sink my candidacy. Well, I'm going to sink yours too, bud. It just really feels that way. I don't know.
Well, I know certain journalists here who have said that the story has legs, but they can't get people to go on the record and that kind of thing. So I don't know.
Yeah.
The point is that rumors can be 9/10 of reality here in Rome when it comes to electing a pope. So because you're realizing, well, we don't want to elect a man that's going to be coming in under a shadow or under a cloud of suspicion. We want to elect a guy that's got gravitas and a certain clean record and no questions around him. It seems to me Parolin has those questions around him. I think Tagle has those questions around him. So I think it's going to be a long conclave. Maybe
there's one more that I want to, make everybody doom and gloom about just a second. Is what about Prevost?
Well, there's been some movement towards Cardinal Prevost, who's the head of the dicastery for bishops, and he was, liked by Pope Francis. His theology leans in the Pope Francis direction. His candidacy is being pushed by the community of Sant'Egidio. Now, community of Sant'Egidio is a very, very powerful movement started here in Italy, very much associated for a long time with Cardinal Zuppi, who they're not supporting, strangely.
Interesting. Yeah.
Supporting Prevost. Now, the thing is, a lot of people are very, very, very concerned about this because the community of Sant'Egidio, even though they do a lot of great philanthropic work, they're a very large organization. They're very wealthy. They're very powerful. They're very influential. Mm-hmm. And yet whatever ecclesial movement or structure they touch turns into a kind of UN NGO where they really dumb the faith down into a kind of pure secular philanthropy. Therefore, a lot of people would say, we don't want the next pope being within 10 feet of the community of Sant'Egidio. And yet Prevost is in deep with them.
Yeah, it's interesting for especially for the non-Catholics in the audience. This Sant'Egidio movement was really a kind of Catholic version of let's go hard into the paint on ecumenism. Let's major in the majors. Let's minor in the sort of the stickier, grabbier points of possible contention. So it was a community where people would come together to chant, and it's sort of circular. And I have to say, on a certain level, I actually kind of like the experience. I've done it a couple of times. I've been to Santa Maria in Trastevere and sung with the group before. There's something to it from an affective standpoint. The problem is that it doesn't appear to work in anything beyond the experience of a kind of singing in the round on a Thursday night. Yeah,
that's exactly. I like that. Singing in the round on a Thursday night, because that's about what it is. That was my first experience with it too, was at Santa Maria in Trastevere, and was actually when Cardinal Zuppi was simply Father Zuppi.
Yeah, wow.
He was pastor there, and I ran into him a couple of times. A very kind soul, very pastoral man. I like Cardinal Zuppi. I don't know I don't know if I want him to be Pope. I don't know if he's got the theological chops for it, but he's a candidate. He's another papabile.
Yeah.
So the three front runners, I think you've identified them: Parolin, Tagle, Prevost, in terms of a quick conclave. If you're going to have a quick conclave, it might be one of those three guys. I don't think it's going to be any of them. I think Tagle's got baggage, Parolin's got baggage, and I think Prevost has baggage. So
just real quick. Prevost has got some baggage from the handling of sexual abuse crisis stuff. That's really his dark mark. I think that a lot of the Cardinals are a little bit more open to sort of swallowing the theology stuff, really, the sort of the centrist, center leftish, again, loose category stuff. But it's the idea that, he pops up on the loggia after a resounding habemus papam, and all of a sudden, the zone is flooded with all kinds of stories about bad, egregious mishandling of the scandal of our time, right?
Yeah, he's also an American,
right.
His parents are French,
right? He grew up where did he grow up? Peru or Peru.
Well, he spent many, many years as a missionary in Peru.
That's right. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, and ran the Augustinian order or something like that. I'm not quite certain.
Yeah.
But wait a minute, maybe yeah. I think
no, that's right. You're right.
Yeah. So anyway, but he was born in Chicago, so
Right.
I am assuming technically he's an American citizen.
Right.
You're born in Chicago. But maybe not. Maybe I'm completely wrong. I think technically he's an American, but maybe not. The point is that he's got these American connections, which normally would undermine anyone's candidacy for the papacy.
Can you explain to my audience again? I have a lot of friends who are not Catholic and they're following this because they're riveted like the rest of us. What is it about the church and Americans? Like why does the Roman Church in particular seem to treat their American sons and daughters with such contempt?
Well, first off, it's just the general Europhile, bureaucrat, snotty attitude towards America. I mean, look no further than there's a theologian that I actually admire, John Milbank. He's a British theologian.
I know, yeah.
Yeah, Milbank, and he's on social media and that kind of thing. Normally, theologically, he's very brilliant. Every once in a while, he'll make some inane, typically Brit comment about America and American politics. It's very condescending. It just assumes that Americans are uneducated boobs, that we're not sophisticated. We're just slack-jawed people that are decades behind their European superiors. So, I mean, that's part of it. I mean, part of it is just a Eurocrat snottiness towards Americans. The other, but a more substantive reason is that they fear America is the only superpower in the world.
Yeah, it's a fear of hegemon. Yeah, I do understand that. That.
And I think that's 90% of it right there, that they don't want American money and American power and American influence streaming into the Vatican so that the Vatican simply becomes then a mouthpiece for American political interests. And so they want to steer clear of that. I think that's a great deal of it.
Well, they're going to need to find money somehow, right? And so as I think about this, like there's American money, there's Chinese money, there's German money.
Yeah.
And all of those come with real problems depending upon your bias and where you're coming from, but it's got to come from somewhere.
And some would argue that, okay, they're afraid of American influence, but why are they not more fearful of German influence? One of the reasons why the Pope has perhaps not come down as hard as he should have on the German synodal way and so forth is because the Vatican didn't want to lose the millions and millions of dollars that the German church sends to the Vatican. Right. So, they'll take German money without any strings attached, and yet they've got all these caveats about American money and so on. And, I think a lot of it has to do more than anything with the kind of Europhile snottiness towards the United States.
Right.
At any rate, I think, though, that the longer the conclave goes on, if it's not a short conclave and it's not Prevost, it's not Tagle, it's not Parolin, could be an Aveline, who is the Archbishop Cardinal of Marseille, France, who Pope Francis really, really loved. But he's another unknown commodity. Nobody knows what he really thinks. His strong suit is that he was born in Algeria of French parents, and he speaks Arabic. So there would be that ecumenical or interreligious, in this case, outreach. So he has some attractiveness, but I think he's a weak candidate. I really think what we're going to see is a conclave that stretches out over 3 or 4 days. And I think by day 3 or 4, the Cardinals are going to be looking at someone like a Cardinal Pizzaballa, who is the head of the Latin Patriarch. He's only 60 years old, so he's too young. But he's a rising star in the church. I really like him.
I have heard, honestly, again, I'm just reading what everybody else is reading, but I am hearing, and you see it here even in the chat, lots of Pizzaballa love. And, and I don't pretend to know anything other than what everybody else is reading, but, his is a name that I keep hearing, and he seems to sort of, I don't know, have a kind of certain something that I can't quite make heads or tails of. But he is 60. And remember, what was it? I believe John Paul II was 58 when he was elected in 1978.
When he was elected. And, I was talking with George Weigel the other day about that. And he goes, you have to remember, though, that the previous Pope before John Paul II lasted 30 days.
Right.
And so there just might have been a sense of, we don't need another Pope that lives 2 years and croaks. Okay. When John Paul was elected, they might have thought, what we need. But in reality, I'm not certain I agree with George on that. I think in reality, what happened was the Cardinals looked around and saw this very young but very, very impressive person.
Yeah.
And said, who is the best person in this room to be the next Pope? It's that guy right there, Karol Wojtyła, and they voted him in. So my hope is that if this is an extended conclave and the really boring guys get pushed to the side, the Tagles, the Parolins, the Avelines, the Prevosts, these really dull, boring dudes get pushed aside, that it's going to open the door to some pretty exciting candidates. There's Cardinal Ike. I believe he's from Sweden.
Sweden.
Yeah, he's very intelligent. He reminds me, of a kind of Wojtyła.
Okay.
And there's Cardinal Pizzaballa, who we were just talking about. Mm-hmm. And even though he's a bit dull, there's Cardinal Erdo of Hungary. I'm sure Rob Traeger, Erdo's on the conservative side, which is a plus in my book.
Yeah.
But he also is known to be a very good governor of the church. I mean, in other words, he knows what he's doing. He's competent. Right. And that might play on the card. Plus, I do believe he's an Eastern Rite Catholic. He's Catholic, but I think he's Eastern Rite.
Yeah, which is interesting unto itself. I should point out, though, if you're going to name drop, I get the name drop. I was chatting with Rod this morning, and he said one of his Hungarian Catholic theologian friends texted him this morning, all like, "Oh, we're getting Tagle. There's no way we're not getting Tagle." So, so in Hungary, they're not. Maybe they're too scared to say out loud that maybe their guy Erdo will be the next pope. But yeah, I like the names you're talking about. I mean, so you're still. Well, I mean, after the first couple of, I mean, if I understand this correctly, Larry, they vote like 4 times a day, though, don't they? Yeah.
Today was just one vote.
Right.
In the evening. But what they do is tomorrow morning they vote, and if they elect a new pope in the morning, then at 10 a.m. the white smoke will come out. If they don't elect a new pope in the morning, then they'll wait to burn the ballots until the second vote, which is at noon.
Oh, so there'll be no smoke then?
There'll be no smoke at 10 a.m. if there's no pope at 10 a.m.
Okay. I see.
If there'll be white smoke at 10 a.m. if there's a pope. If there's no pope, you won't see anything until noon. And at noon, if there's still no pope, they'll burn the ballots and it'll be black smoke again at noon. And then there's 2 more votes that afternoon. And then the same scenario, as soon as there's a pope, there'll be white smoke. But if there's no pope, you won't get black smoke till later in the day. So that's the way it works. Now, I know that there's a lot of people out there that think Tagle, but here in Rome, his name is not being mentioned.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone mentions him because everybody else in the press is mentioning him. When I say, the people that are in the know around here say, no, there's no big movement for him.
Yeah.
Now I could watch tomorrow morning.
Right.
White smoke will go up at 10 a.m. It's going to be,
Hello, everybody.
Yeah, let me do some John Lennon Imagine karaoke.
Yeah, he reminds me of, if you're a Simpsons fan, I don't know if you are, but he reminds me of Dr. Nick Riviera in terms of his style. Like, hello, everybody. It's so good to be here. All right. Abemus Papa. And you're just like, I'm like pulling whatever's left of my hair out at that point. It's like, oh.
Yeah, I've seen Cardinal Tagle give talks and stuff, and it's like, gee, please no. There's even there's a thing going around right now, it's ABT, anybody but Tagle. ABT, anybody but Tagle.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, but you know what? That means it's probably going to be Tagle, because I don't know what I'm talking about. And by the way, I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't talk to Cardinals and so forth. I talk to people who do talk to Cardinals.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah.
you know,
Well, and it doesn't matter. Look, at this point, in terms of that, Larry, they go in. They're in. They're closed in, right? Conclave, right? It's like with key or something like it. They're locked inside. So it doesn't matter who you know at this point. If you're not inside that room, you don't really know anything. If you don't mind, I'd like to change. I ask you a question.
Sure.
What do you make of the mainstream media coverage of what's been going on?
Oh, I think it's been pretty boilerplate, to be honest with. The mainstream media is focusing on the early candidates, Parolin, Tagle, these guys. That's who the media are all focusing on, and that's because it feeds their essential narrative where they speak in a political argot. It's like left, right. Left, right, moderate, and so let's talk about guys that fit neatly into left, right, moderate, and handicap them.
And for the mainstream media, that means essentially social issues, right? I mean, for the mainstream media, that means or pelvic issues, as we like to joke, right? That's how you map people.
Well, yeah. Let's face the elephant in the living room. It's all about gays.
Yeah,
that's what it's about. It's about homosexuality. It's about LGBTQ. Right. I mean, every single damn article is eventually going to come around to, well, Pope Francis did say, who am I to judge? Right. It's like, geez, okay. Yeah. 12 years of this guy's papacy, and he wrote some great stuff. He wrote some less than great stuff, but the only damn thing people remember is, who am I to judge about the gays? And, every single piece of secular reporting eventually comes around to talking about what is Cardinal so-and-so's views on LGBTQ. Right. What it's about. It's what it's about.
So it's interesting, when we were younger men, Larry, it was about abortion, wasn't it? It was about abortion. Yeah. It was about contraception. And now it's really not about even those things, although those are still salient, of course. It
was more about contraception. There wasn't a whole lot of controversy about abortion other than should it be legal or illegal or whatever, questions about whether or not, if you're a Catholic politician,
that's a good point.
Do I have to support Roe or not? But anyway, you're right. I mean, the doo-doo hit the fan with Humanae Vitae and contraception. And that was the big issue back then. Is whoever the new pope is he a little softer on the contraception thing? And now it's everyone agrees, well, that's BS. So, even though I firmly, adhere to the church's teaching in that regard, most Catholics don't.
Right.
And so we've just moved on from that issue now to the next big issue, the next line we want to transgress, and that's the LGBTQ steamroller. And there are way too many Cardinals that buy into that ideology, I'm afraid.
Right. Okay, so there are kind of two. Let's say that we get a Francis II, and rather than playing footsie with this issue, leans in hard, right, and opens the church and all this sort of stuff. I mean, it'll be fascinating because I do think that will precipitate a schism.
It will. You stole the words right out of my mouth. Okay, and I think Cardinal Mueller said as much the other day. Cardinal Mueller in an interview said, well, if we get a pope that's even more liberal than Francis or whatever, then there's going to be a schism. There is. It's just flat out. Catholics like you and me are fed up. I've been talking to lots of them here in Rome. There's some names I would toss out, but it would be breaking confidence in they're well-known people. Mm-hmm. And they're saying, look, after 12 years of this papacy, we are fed up. And we've just been in a holding pattern. We've been hanging on by our fingernails. We want to just have a good pope this next time around. If they elect Francis II, and he's actually even worse than Pope Francis, then the thinking is we're just going to say to hell with it. We're going to create some alternative ecclesial reality of some not a Protestant Reformation type thing, but so
then we're really, what you're saying, then we're really going into a kind of an Avignon type situation.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. Where in other words, a real schism where
Yeah.
a bunch of Catholics might say we no longer it's a kind of a sede vacanti thing, not really saying that the Pope isn't the Pope, but saying, you know what, he's an idiot and we're going to elect our own Pope. We don't like this one, we're going to elect our own over here. And you might end up with rival popes. You might, but that's way ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, all right.
Way downstream. That's, you know what? Don't think for one second that the cardinal electors don't know that as well.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Like, are they aware of this dynamic, or is this just a bunch of loud mouthy Americans on YouTube? Like, I just don't know. All right. Well, let's flip that script. Let's say that a B-17 or a JP3 or even more, a Pius, right? Let's just say that an elevation of somebody like that, signaling, of course, a return, a regression, retrogradism, etc. I will be fascinated to watch the mainstream media do a flip over within the second of now going back to its more traditional role, at least for the past 50 years, of really going after the Catholic Church. I mean, that'll be quite the head snap, don't you think?
Oh, yeah. And that'll happen too.
Yeah.
Watch, just watch. It'll happen. But all of this, though, Cale, is why I do believe it's not going to be a quick conclave, because I don't think they're just going to want to rubber stamp Francis II to come in. I think there's enough discontent out there, not just with the LGBTQ stuff where Francis was squishy on that, but with the fact the Vatican is, in debt and all this kind of stuff. They're going to want to turn to alternative candidates that don't represent the Francis status quo. They're not going to elect a Cardinal Burke or a Cardinal Mueller. They're not going to go all scorched earth and elect some, mini-me Torquemada. Not that Burke or Mueller are like that necessarily, but you get my.
I mean, I'd be stoked, but anyway, go ahead.
I'd be thrilled if it was Burke or Mueller. I'd be jumping cartwheels. It's not going to happen, because most of the other cardinals realize what kind of reputation they would bring, what the media spin would be. Oh my God, they've elected scorched earth, right-wing reactionary nut jobs from hell, even though Burke and Mueller are perfectly fine men.
Right.
They'd be good popes. Both of them would be good popes, but
it'll be really interesting. So I'm going to ask you this last question, and then I'm going to ask folks, if you've got a question, I want to let you go to bed, basically, because it's really late for you. You've been up since 4 a.m. Rome time. So I'm being cognizant of that, my friends, here in the live stream. But if you have a question for Larry, put 3 question marks and your question, and I'll put it up on the screen, and Larry can take a whack at it. When Francis was elected in 2013, and then 6 months later, Births launches single-handedly 1,000 Catholic websites and YouTube channels after his comment, "Who am I to judge?" on the plane in 2013.
Yeah.
We did not have an alternative Catholic media ecosphere in 2013. We have one now. You and I, I don't call myself a Catholic YouTuber. Obviously, I'm Catholic and I do YouTube stuff. And occasionally I talk about Catholic things like we are doing right now. But none of that stuff existed. I mean, you had EWTN, you had like LifeSite News, and I don't even know if these people had like websites practically. I mean, I'm being a little bit facetious. That's not the landscape now. So how do you sense at all that this figures into the way folks in Rome think?
I think it does, both positively and negatively. Positively, I think they're aware that you've got an educated Catholic laity and they're up on their game and they know what's going on. And we need to take that into consideration. And we need to therefore elect as Pope somebody that is a real conciliator, somebody that can speak to all these different groups in the church and real parrhesia, Pope Francis would say, todos, everyone, but not that todos over there. We don't mean that todos.
I don't mean that todos.
yeah, we don't like those todos. So, but a real todos Pope, a Pope who can bring it all together and realizes with all these social media voices that's something to do. Negatively, you might see a reactionary response to this. And this is what you saw with Pope Francis. Yeah, I think this is what you saw in Traditionis Custodes. I think Traditionis Custodes and the banning of the Latin Mass had almost everything to do with the proliferation of trad blogs, trad podcasts, trad this, trad that was constantly trashing Pope Francis.
Mm-hmm.
Now, by the way, I'm not blaming the trads for that. I'm not saying.
No, I was going to give you the caveat.
I'm saying this is, there are people in Rome who look at this whole blogosphere as a right-wing thing.
Right.
And so say, well, we just need to suppress it or put it down or, just ignore it.
All right. So, all right. I'm going to, Anthony, I'm waiting for your question, but I'm going to go up here and put, I think Mark had a question first. All right. Mark Jackson asks, Larry, what's your biggest fear?
Tagle.
Okay.
That's my biggest fear.
Yeah. Same. I would say
I could live with, you know what? I could live with Parolin because Parolin really is a moderate and a conciliatory. I just think he's dull. He's status quo and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah. A Parolin is a vote for the bureaucracy by the bureaucracy. Not my favorite, but I'm not losing my skin on this one. Tagle, I'm man. Where's that Bosphorus again? I kid. Okay.
I'm terrified of the possibility of Tagle being Pope simply because I really think he's such a lightweight. I think he's such a silly, superficial person.
I mean, in this momentous time, in which, I mean, again, I can't tell you, Larry, I have so many non-Catholic friends who are watching this with me. Just they're riveted by this whole thing unfolding. They can see sort of what has happened in the last 12 years. They like us used to joke, like, is the Pope Catholic? And like that's even a joke that's not even really a joke for the past 12 years is a shocking turn of events, especially in the wake of JP2 and B16. So I think that's a real thing, and that you could meet this momentous moment in which there is clearly a return to a desire for something more robust, something more mysterious, something more ancient, something more strange, and we're gonna go into the pain with Tagle. I find that incredible.
Yeah,
all right,
the karaoke cardinal.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just no. Okay, this is good from my friend Anthony. Does Larry think there's a real possibility of two claimants coming out of this conclave?
Not out of this conclave, no. In other words,
walk us through then what you were meaning.
Well, I'm basically just mimicking what Cardinal Mueller was hinting at, which is not that if the wrong pope is, if from our perspective, a crappy pope is elected, it's not that people are going to immediately pick up their marbles and go to a different game. You're going to, and I would counsel this. I would say to people, sit back, don't prejudge anything. Sit back and see what unfolds. But if the new pope comes along and and 1 year into his papacy issues a motu proprio that says we're now going to have gay marriage in the Catholic Church, and we're going to start ordaining women to the priesthood, and so on. Okay, then you're looking at schism. You really are. There's no doubt about it. No doubt. Now, whether or not we'd have we would elect our own pope, we might just do what the SSPX did. And just back away temporarily from communion with Rome until Rome comes to its senses. I mean, that's take a lot of forms.
No, sure. And that's a remarkable potential turn of events. I mean, but I do think people are, again, after 12 years, I think people are if you would have said this to me 12 years ago, I would have said, Larry, you're out of your freaking mind. What are you talking about? Don't stop it with the crazy talk. The Holy Spirit protects, right? I would have played that whole card. I agree. I think, it could be wild. So, all right. Let's see. Julian, I'm curious what you guys make of the online popularity of Pizzaballa, given that people don't know much about him. Why is he a trad favorite? Just vibes. Yeah, good question.
I think that a lot of it with regard to the trads is just vibes. I've been really surprised to see such strong trad support for Pizzaballa because he hasn't really done anything to promote traditionalism. I haven't seen anything that says he's really favorably disposed towards the traditional Latin Mass.
I'm pretty sure he's publicly celebrated the extraordinary form on several occasions. So that must be what they're drawing from.
Yeah, I read that, and yet I hear I've spoken to people here in Rome Well, I guess, by the way, that explains why I guess trads do like him, because he said the Latin Mass.
Yeah.
That explains that, I guess. But I'm just listening to some people in Rome and talking to them who know people that know Pizzaballa well, who say he's not a big TLM guy. He's just not.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, okay, I think there's a vibe around him because the Latin Patriarchate back in Jerusalem is notoriously corrupt. Notoriously corrupt. There has been a steady string of real clunker patriarchs there, and they've been in debt. There has been money scandals and other scandals, and it's been fractious. Pizzaballa comes in there. He gets their finances squared away. He ends the corruption. The governing style is very competent and streamlined. He's very pastoral. He has a real sense of what's going on the ground. And the guy has been able to truly negotiate the troubled waters of Palestine, Gaza, Israel, and so forth with the Christian community as well. Yeah. And anybody that can do that. And of course, when Hamas, when Hamas did its thing 2 years ago and
October 7th.
Massacred those people in the kibbutzes and so forth and took hostages. Pizzaballa offered himself to them as a substitute. Take me, release the hostages, take me as a hostage. Now that's you talk about, that's more than a vibe.
Yeah.
That shows a certain holiness, a certain courage, a sanctity.
Yeah.
That's the making of a saint.
Yeah. So, I would only call myself a trad adjacent, as I've joked with you before, but I can see how it hits two really important things for someone with a sort of a more trad orientation, which is, personal witness. And again, I just don't think folks in Rome understand how upset people are about corruption, both sexual corruption and economic corruption. I just think that, it's maybe it's sort of a chronic built-in that when you're in Rome, you sort of lose sight of these things. But I think the trads are I know a lot of people who made their way toward TLM and TLM communities Now, again, we all know that TLM communities are not immune to such things. And so I'm not trying to make that argument because I'm sure in the comments you'll say, oh, well, what about this guy? But there's something about kind of standing athwart, business as usual that is attractive. And I think that Pizzaballa appears to have that kind of sensibility to him. Go ahead.
You put something what you just said is no business as usual. I had an article in Catholic World Report came out last week that said the business as usual mentality is untenable. People can go and read it. It's still up on Catholic World Report. And to answer the question of what is the vibe about Pizzaballa, he does not come across as an apparatchik. He does not come across as a bureaucrat. All the other candidates, when I say they're boring, it just seems like they're just so much part of what Paul Kingsnorth would call, the machine.
Yeah, that's right.
Simone Weil called it the apparatus.
Yeah.
Balthasar called it the system.
Wow.
I mean, and it just seems like there is this thing.
Yeah, I love this that you sort of rattled all those things off because it's so fascinating that a lot of these big brain mid-century thinkers all could sense that machine thing that Kingsnorth right now currently is so eloquent about. But it's so bad. You just rattle off those guys and they all could smell the same thing. They could all see the same thing, which is this ratcheting system and machine like thing. That's really interesting to me.
Parolin, Aveline, Prevost, Tagle, they're all part of the machine.
Yeah. They're really machine creatures. Yeah, they're machine creatures.
They're bureaucrats. Whereas Pizzaballa seems like he's an outsider. Like Carlo Wojtyła was an outsider in '78. Everybody thought it was going to be some Italian apparatchik once again, coming in, being the next pope, replacing, and in comes this young Polish guy that the rest of the world had never heard of before. And he was not simply part of the machine. He was his own man. And I think that's part of the attraction of Pizzaballa. I think people just get a sense of, he's like Donald Trump in a sense. I don't like Trump personally, but one of the things I do like about Trump is he pisses off people I don't like. Right? In other words, he upsets the machine.
Yeah.
He upsets the machine. And I kind of like that about Trump, that he doesn't care what people think. He's going to upset the machine. I have other issues with Trump, but
to that point, there's that sense that there is something wrong with the machine.
Yeah.
And if you're going to be a machine gremlin, no, thank you. I'm looking for someone who has some perspective at the very least on, no, I don't want to, and this is why, maybe this is going too far afield, but whenever somebody tells me they're a progressive or they tell me they're a conservative, I ask two questions: progress to what and conserve what? Like, what are we talking about? Right. And if you're conservative for the bureaucracy, then I don't want a conservative. Right. If if you're a progressive toward, a kind of, rainbows and sunshine, LGBTQ, whatever, brave new world, like, I don't want any part of you. Right. I want something who's going to stand on the perennial, deposit of faith and say, look, this is the good news. It was good news. Exactly right. It was good news 2,000 years ago. It was good news 1,000 years ago. It was good news 500 years ago. It was good news 5 minutes ago. Like, what are we doing?
How hard is that to see and understand? How hard would that be to find a guy that thinks like that? It just boggles the mind that we're tossing around these names of all these other guys. But, I think that a Pizzaballa, if the white smoke comes out, in a few days and they announce Pier Battista Pizzaballa, I'll be dancing cartwheels. Might learn to regret it because he'll probably be Pope for 35 or 40 years or something like that. And he might turn out to be a terrible Pope.
Right. No, I know. But, but stability is like a real thing. It's a mark. It's a mark, isn't it? I mean, so anyway. All right. Well, look, Larry, I have kept you up, and I want to thank you really deeply. I'm honored that you would carve out this time for me late in the night on the first day. I know you still got plenty of days, hopefully, there for you. So thank you for coming on. Folks, please hit the like and subscribe button to this podcast. I will repackage this and do it as a replay so you can see it that way. Also, Larry writes all over the place, so just Google him. But his website is gaudiumetspes22.com. You can find everything that he does with links there. He's been writing diaries. He had a couple of great diaries he wrote for First Things magazine. He writes for Catholic World Report. Anything else, Larry, before I let you go?
No, that's good. National Catholic Register here.
National Catholic Register. Great. Okay. All right. Well, folks, thank you so much for showing up. We hit 500, Larry. We got 500 people tuning in. That's pretty crazy.
I'm probably just confused him more.
That's all right. But thank you so much. And Larry, have a great one. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks a lot, buddy.
All right. Bye, guys. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Underneath Podcast. Welcome to the Underneath Podcast.